Don't touch that flag. Isaiah's voice cut through the terminal like a blade. The airport manager froze, hand inches from the casket. Travelers halted mid-step. Silence crashed over the terminal. Something sacred had just been threatened. What no one knew, that flag wasn't just cloth. It was blood, loyalty, and a promise Isaiah made under enemy fire. And now, that promise was under attack by his own chain of command. So when Langley stepped forward again, Isaiah didn't flinch, because breaking the rules was the only way to keep his oath. But if he stood his ground now, would he lose his job, or worse, be arrested in front of the fallen soldier's family? What happened next silenced the entire airport. Welcome to Grateful Stories HQ. Before we continue this story, let us know in the comments where in the world are you watching from. If these stories speak to you, hit that subscribe button to support the channel, because tomorrow we have another special story for you. Washington, D.C. breathed its usual rhythm. Sirens in the distance, horns on the freeway, and the low hum of conversation spilling out of cafes and bus stops. But inside Unity International Airport, that rhythm surged louder. Rolling suitcases bumped against polished floors. Flight announcements echoed overhead. Families reunited with cheers. Others waited in silence, eyes flicking from phones to flight boards. And amid it all, Isaiah Knox walked with presence that parted noise like a blade through smoke. His uniform was immaculate, creased with precision, metals polished until they caught the overhead lights like small suns. His boots struck the ground in perfect cadence. But more striking than any detail was the way he moved. Not like a man in transit, but like a man on sacred ground. Isaiah wasn't just TSA. Before the badge and ID scanner, he was a tombguard, trained in silence, precision, and reverence. One of the few who kept eternal watch at Arlington's tomb of the unknown soldier. Discipline wasn't something he wore. It lived in him. And today, he was fulfilling a different oath. The casket, waiting on the tarmac, carried more than a folded flag. It carried a life that once stood beside Isaiah in another kind of uniform, under another kind of sky. Corporal Miles Hart, a friend, a brother, a man who once pulled Isaiah from death's grasp in a desert far from home. Isaiah's eyes didn't scan the crowd. They didn't need to. He wasn't looking for permission or validation. His focus was fixed. One mission, one promise, one name. The oath wasn't made in a courtroom or chapel. It was made in blood, under fire, with only seconds to spare. Bring me home, right? And Isaiah had never broken promise. The desert was a furnace, swallowing sound, distorting the air with heat shimmer. Boots sank into coarse sand. Gear clanked with every step. Somewhere beyond the ridgeline, tension clung to the air like dust before a storm. Isaiah and Miles had marched side by side for months. Same chow, same jokes, same look in her eyes when the night went quiet. But that day, the day the convoy took fire, everything changed. It started with a pop, then another, then chaos. Gunfire tore across the horizon like tearing paper. The squad scattered, diving behind broken stone and half-buried steel. Isaiah moved instinctively, low and fast. But crack from the left, too close, sent him stumbling. He didn't see the shrapnel, just a sudden silence in his ears and the copper taste in his mouth. Time slowed, then a force slammed into him. Miles. Full tackle. They hit the ground together, dirt in teeth, smoke rising. Miles was shouting, but the ringing in Isaiah's ears turned the words to noise. And then, through the haze, one thing broke through. If I don't make it, take me home, right? Isaiah tried to rise, but Miles shoved him away, returning fire with sharp, practiced rhythm. Covering, protecting. By the time the dust cleared, Isaiah had made it behind the truck. Miles hadn't. His helmet lay cracked beside a burn-scorched pack. They found his tags, folded the flag, bagged the boots. But Isaiah never forgot that moment. Not the gunfire, not the blast, not the blood, just the voice. If I don't make it, he did. And Isaiah hadn't stopped moving since. Today wasn't about paperwork or airport procedure. It was about fulfilling a promise spoken in the heat of battle. A blood-bound oath between brothers. One last march. Back at Unity International, the terminal doors slid open with a hiss, and the cool air inside met the summer heat outside. A woman stepped in, back straight, eyes steady, though the years had carved quiet grief into her features. Ruth Hart, retired military nurse, mother to Corporal Miles Hart. She clutched her granddaughter's hand. 10-year-old Nina, wide-eyed and quiet in a navy blue dress. Her shoes too polished. Her questions held tight behind pursed lips. Ruth paused near the security checkpoint, scanning the crowds. She didn't flinch at the noise. She didn't blink at the stares. She'd been in hospitals thick with pain and silence. But this, waiting for her son's final homecoming, tightened her throat in a way triage never had. Nina tugged her arm gently. "Grandma, is that Uncle Miles' plane?" Ruth followed the child's gaze to the distant tarmac, where a casket had just been offloaded, flag draped and still. Her lips trembled, but she nodded once. "Yes, baby, he's home." Isaiah stood nearby, watching them silently. He straightened his uniform once more. Ruth saw him and gave a solemn nod. They were no longer strangers. They were family, gathered for the hardest goodbye. Inside the administrative wing of the airport, the atmosphere shifted. While the terminal buzzed with anticipation and quiet reverence, one office pulsed with irritation. Victor Langley leaned over a glowing screen, tapping furiously. He didn't care for delays. He didn't care for ceremony. The metrics on his dashboard, departures, gate times, terminal traffic, were his gospel. And today, something disrupted his holy flow. He narrowed his eyes at the updated schedule. A military funeral procession was set to move through the central concourse, right through the heart of peak travel. Unacceptable. He stood briskly, brushing a speck from his press cuff, and marched toward the operations desk where Monica Tran was reviewing her checklist. Why are they walking the casket through the main terminal? Monica looked up, careful with her words. The directive came from Director Romero herself. "Sir, full honors. Terminal route. The TSA liaison's already in place. Isaiah Knox." Langley scoffed. "Knox? The one who thinks he's still in uniform? We're not a parade ground. We're an airport." He handed Monica a revised route map. "Reroute the escort through Corridor B. Back entrance. Less disruptive." Monica hesitated. She glanced at the names on the list. Miles Hart, confirmed veteran, active duty honors. "I don't think that's what the family." Langley cut her off with a wave. "Just make it happen." As he turned, Monica's eyes lingered on the map in her hand, her grip tightening. Back on the floor, Isaiah walked alongside Ruth and Nina. He hadn't yet seen the resistance forming, but a quiet storm had begun, one that would soon test every promise he made under foreign skies. Outside on the tarmac, the military transport plane descended against the golden hue of a late afternoon sky. As its wheels touched the runway, a hush seemed to settle over Unity International. The airport's usual rhythm paused, if only for a moment. Inside, Isaiah stood near the window beside Ruth and Nina. He gave Ruth a quiet nod, then stepped forward, straightening his jacket. His gloved hand clutched the paperwork. Authorization for ceremonial honors. Not that he needed it. His posture alone spoke volumes. The service doors opened. A military detail stood ready near the cargo hold. The flag-draped casket of the Corporal Miles Hart was lowered with reverence. Isaiah took his position at the head. No words passed between the uniformed men. Only solemn nods, measured breaths, and the sound of boots aligning. With the casket secured on the ceremonial trolley, the honor escort began its slow march into the terminal. Travelers paused. Some stood. Some removed hats. Phones lowered. A strange reverence followed the procession like a shadow, silent and steady. But not far behind, Monica hesitated at a hallway intersection. Langley's alternate route map still folded in her hand. And ahead of them all, Isaiah led the way, each step echoing an oath. The procession moved deeper into the terminal. Boots firm, the American flag gliding steady through shafts of sunlight streaking the polished floor. Travelers stood in silence, heads bowed as the casket passed. From a side hallway, Langley emerged briskly, a stack of printed Dieter maps clenched in his fist. He sidestepped through the gathering crowd, eyes locked on Isaiah. Monica followed a few paces behind, her face uneasy. Langley stepped directly into the path of the escort. "This way," he said, holding out the paper, voice clipped. "We'll reroute to the lower access corridor. Less disruptive." Isaiah didn't stop. The escort moved around Langley like water around stone. Langley stepped closer than he should have, and reached out, fingers extended toward the casket's flag. Isaiah halted. The others stopped with him. In one smooth motion, Isaiah raised his hand and caught Langley's wrist midair. His voice, low and steady, cut through the silence. "You don't touch the flag." Langley froze. The paper slipped from his hand and floated to the floor. All around, passengers turned, eyes fixed on the unfolding standoff. No shouting, no struggle, just a firm grip, and a stare that made clear this was sacred ground. The moment hung in the air, still as stone. Langley's wrist still hovered in Isaiah's grip, but the meaning had already struck the room. Travelers began to stop, mid-step. Rolling suitcases slowed to a halt. Conversations died in their throats. Phones that had been raised to capture the scene were slowly lowered, not out of boredom, but reverence. Near the information desk, an elderly man stepped forward, hair silver, spine straight, hands trembling as he removed his cap. His voice was thin but firm. "Clarence Boyd, Vietnam, 68. That soldier, he's earned his path." He stood at attention, hat pressed to his chest. From the gathered crowd, Ruth Hart stepped closer. Her voice cracked, but her words carried weight. "That's my son you're trying to hide," she said. "You move him to a service tunnel. You erase what he gave. You hide him. You hide his sacrifice." Eyes turned to her. Some now recognized the woman. Others didn't need to. Her pain said enough. Isaiah released Langley's wrist. The air shifted, like pressure lifting from the room, but his eyes never wavered. The casket moved forward again, slow and sure. The line of passengers silently parted like a tide. The airport had become a chapel. Langley's voice shattered the hush like glass on tile. "This is not Arlington. This is an airport. You don't get to hijack operations for a show. Now get out of the way." His words echoed, sharp and graceless, bouncing off walls meant for boarding calls and coffee orders, not fury. Isaiah didn't flinch. He took one step forward, measured, controlled. His hand never left the polished wooden handle of the casket trolley. He spoke quietly, but every syllable struck the room like a drumbeat. This flag was earned. It was folded by brothers, carried by memory, stained in the desert. You don't reroute honor. Langley's mouth twitched. He turned to security staffer Monica Tran, eyes blazing with command. "Tran, detour the procession now." Monica stood frozen. The weight of two uniforms, Langley's badge and Isaiah's presence, pressed on her. Then slowly, she stepped to Isaiah's side. Not loudly, not defiantly, just enough to be clear. "I follow orders," she said, but not at the expense of dignity. Langley blinked. For the first time, doubt crept into his voice. A few in the crowd nodded. Some placed hands over their hearts. Isaiah turned his head slightly. The casket moved on. Miles was still going home. From the far end of the terminal, steady footsteps approached. Heels on tile, calm yet purposeful. Captain Lydia Romero entered the space, dressed in civilian clothes but carrying the unmistakable weight of command. Silver hair swept back, eyes sharp. The crowd instinctively parted, sensing she wasn't just airport leadership. She was something older, sterner, earned. She didn't speak at first. She walked straight to the casket, came to a full stop, and saluted. Her hand held steady at her brow for several long seconds, unwavering. Then she lowered it, her gaze locking onto Langley. "You're dismissed," she said flatly. "Now stand down or I'll have your badge before this procession leaves this floor." Langley's jaw worked as if struggling against invisible restraints. Words hovered, but none came. Romero turned to Isaiah, her expression softening just enough. "Carry on, Officer Knox." Isaiah gave a single nod, then resumed his steps. Slow, exact, sacred. Langley stepped back, powerless. Captain Romero remained beside Ruth and Nina, hand gently on the child's shoulder, grounding the moment. The hallway didn't feel like an airport anymore. It felt like hallowed ground. And in that silence, Miles continued his journey home, through honor, not convenience. Isaiah resumed the slow, reverent march. One step. Pause. One step. Precision carved by years of sacred duty. The terminal, once filled with boarding calls, impatient footsteps, rolling luggage, had fallen completely silent. No announcements. No chatter. Just breath held in collective respect. Passengers lined both sides of the corridor. Some stepped aside with bowed heads. Others placed hands over hearts. A few dropped to their knees. Overcome, veterans saluted, eyes wet. Children stopped asking questions. They simply watched. And then from the edge of the crowd, a small voice. That's Uncle Miles' flag. It was Nina. She held Ruth's hand tightly, eyes fixed on the stars and stripes draped over casket. Her voice, soft but unwavering, carried further than the silence. Ruth knelt beside her, tears glistening. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Isaiah continued past them, chin high, step steady, his promise carried in every motion. Miles was going home. Not hidden, not rerouted, but honored. Not all heroes make it back. But when they do, they deserve to walk to the world they died defending, with heads bowed in their honor. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Let the world remember what respect looks like and what it costs.